Hello everyone, I'm TG and welcome back to the House of Sleaze. Today I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm going to go over a few basic tips for making a map preset. A lot of people have been asking for something like this, and a preset can really make the difference between winning and losing when it comes to a lot of builds. So I'm going to go over just a few things that will really help you take control of your map and hopefully help you win. So let's take a look. So the first thing you want to do is have different presets for different masterminds. That means have a preset specifically for Annette, have a preset specifically for Daniel, have a preset specifically for Alex, and then one for Spencer or one for Nikolai. Of course, depending on who you play. So what this means is, for example, if you're going to set up a preset for Annette, it's going to be drastically different than it is for someone like Daniel, because Annette is a lot of the time focused on spamming. So you want to fill up one side of the map or one specific room, whereas Daniel, he's going to need creatures peppered all around the map. The next thing you want to do is when placing creatures and traps on your preset, you want to typically use things that are not in the deck that you're using for that mastermind. So for example, if you're using a creature heavy Annette that's all about spamming, you might not have the bioenergy economy to support liquors. So what you want to do is place liquors on your preset. That way the survivors still have to deal with them, but you don't have to worry about placing them and using 7 bioenergy. Another example of this is if you're using someone like Nikolai, let's say, he's all about the guns. So maybe you don't want to have so many traps or creatures in your deck whenever you're playing. So if you pepper them throughout the map in your preset, you don't have to worry about that. You can focus specifically on what you're doing. A great example of this that I use often is whenever I am using Nikolai, I use Watchdog Nikolai, so my deck is all guns. But the preset I use is nothing but traps. That way, the survivors are forced to deal with this huge variance of things that they need to worry about. So they're looking at cameras, they're killing creatures, but they still gotta look at the ground because my preset has traps littered all over the place. Another important thing to think about is which doors you want to keep locked. So when choosing, keep in mind, where do you start as a mastermind on that map? If you're looking directly at a door, you can lock that door right away. So you probably don't need to lock that door in your preset. You want to lock a door that's out of the way that you don't really want to think about, but it could be very important. Think about where you're weakest, where you're not going to have time to build up the resources you need to stop the survivors. That's where you want to lock your doors. Arguably, the most important part of making your preset is where you place your objectives. So you really got to keep in mind what you want the survivors to do. If you're using someone like Spam Annette or Spam Spencer, you might want to place them all in a relatively close location so you can buckle down and defend just that area and not have to worry about other parts of the map. Alternatively, if you're using someone like Daniel or Alex, you might want to spread them out as much as possible. That way the survivors have to cover a lot of ground and it gives you an opportunity to stop them every step of the way. The point of this is making it as difficult as possible for survivors based on how you're playing. Because you're the mastermind. Make those bitches work for it. Another important thing you have to do, and something that's actually quite difficult, is learning how to use your preset to defend biocores. Seeing as you can't choose where your biocores are placed, this makes it exceedingly difficult to defend them. So one strategy is to put some token defense around each biocore, but that really only works if you're playing someone like Daniel or Alex. If you're playing as someone a little more spammy, you might want to put your creatures in a centralized location. That way you can again control the route that the survivors are going to take. A lot of the time, defending your biocores with the preset comes more down to finding chokes than it does to actually placing things around the biocore. Some maps are a lot harder to do this than others, but you really just got to find what works for you. When it comes to traps and presets, don't discount them just because you're using a build that doesn't really require traps. Traps are very, very important. What's also important is where to place them. You don't just want to place them willy-nilly. Try to place them around corners or places that you think the survivors won't see. Right outside the door is not always the best spot. What might be a little bit better is outside the door and around a corner, because then they're not paying attention anymore. They think they've avoided danger. The most important thing you can do is jump into practice mode and check those corners yourself. This is something a lot of players still don't do. When you place a creature on the map in your preset, you can control what direction it faces. This can be the difference between a bite and that creature going down without a fight. What you want to focus on is finding choke points or placing a creature behind a door and making sure they're facing that door or they're facing where the survivors are going to come from. Because if they're not, they're going to have to take the time to turn around, and it can quite honestly be the difference between life and death. I'll admit it took me a hell of a lot longer than it should have to figure out that you can do this, even though it does say right at the bottom of the screen that you have this option. So don't discount how important this is. For example, if I was going to go ahead and place a jester here, if I placed it just facing the default way, it's not going to screech. But if I face it towards the door, it is, and you're going to be able to get the stun off on the survivors. Lastly, make sure you're controlling your map. What this means is plot a course for the survivors. Don't let them go wherever they want. You're the mastermind after all. So if you look at this, this isn't a net preset. All my keys are on this side of the map. So obviously, I want the survivors to come this way. That's why I've loaded it up. And then if you look here, this is a Daniel preset. So I've placed creatures around all the choke points that the survivors are absolutely going to pass by. That way I can jump into the creatures and give them a little bit of how's your father. The mark of a good preset is when the survivors know that they're playing on your terms and they can't just run wild. If you make sure you're in control of the map, that means you're going to save bioenergy and you're going to be able to set up the situations that you want to set up, as opposed to just playing catch up and spending all your bioenergy trying to keep the survivors down whenever they're already miles ahead of you. Just think about whenever you're playing survivor. What's the worst thing? Whenever you're going down a path and there's shit everywhere. You're thinking, oh my god, where's he getting all this bioenergy? No. That's the power of his preset. So in conclusion, it's all about experimentation. When it comes to map presets, there's not really that many tips that I can give you other than the basic ones that I just outlined. It's all about trying and finding out what exactly works for you. Remember, you're going to take some losses while you experiment. Don't get discouraged. And I know it takes a little bit to really get a handle on how exactly you want your preset to work, but I guarantee you it makes all the difference. A powerful preset is the difference between winning and losing, 100%. And overall, playing Mastermind is a lot more difficult than playing a Survivor. It's a lot harder to get into, but just keep in mind that the preset is the most powerful tool you have at your disposal. You're the mastermind. You want to make these survivors run your experiment. So as always, I'm TG. If you like what you saw, you know what to do. If not, And if you want to see more guides, just let me know down below what guides you want to see, and I'll be sure to make that shit happen. Keep it sleazy.